The 2023 general elections have truly shaken up Nigeria's political landscape. Gone are the days of leaders who rose from poverty, who walked barefoot for miles to attend school, or made the extraordinary leap from prison to presidency. In this election, Nigeria witnessed a remarkable departure from its historical narrative as wealthy and ambitious candidates emerged as the front contenders for the nation's top job. And now, for the first time in the nation's history, we have a president who combines wealth, ambition, and preparedness in a way that breaks the mold of previous leaders. As we dissect this extraordinary election, we invite you to join us on a thought-provoking journey unraveling the implications of this electoral sea change and the lessons it has imparted. Let's dive in and challenge the conventional wisdom and open our eyes to the new dawn of Nigeria's political horizon with Azu Ishiekwene, who is the astute editor-in-chief of Leadership and the author of the engaging article, What Nigeria's Election Cannot Teach Does Not Exist. Welcome, Mr. Azu.
Thank you for having me, because it's a pleasure to be here once again.
So, sir, what inspired the article, What Nigerian Politics Cannot Teach Does Not Exist?
Well, that's an interesting question. For two reasons. The first reason is that because the article was coming weeks after the election, I had to think deep and hard about a headline that would be able to sustain interest. So that's the first reason why I came up with that. And that took me a lot of hard thinking. And I think the second reason is also because I have people around me who attend the Pentecostal church that uses that slogan as its rallying cry. So I thought perhaps I should improvise that and hope that some members or followers of that church might be interested in just seeing what exactly this is all about.
Truly, what Nigerians politics cannot teach does not exist.
Well, you say so.
So we dive into, so how does the emergence of a wealth and ambitious president of a country with a history of leaders from a low background change the whole political landscape?
Yes, well, in the article in question, which we are considering today, we tried to sort of reflect on 8. I'm not saying that those 8 points are the exhaustive 8 points about the new lessons, if you like, that Nigeria's election 2023 taught. But I thought that those were fundamental. They were not exhaustive, but they were fundamental questions, which I reflected upon before coming to it. And it seemed to me clearly that on top of the pile is the question of wealth, ambition, and power. And I sort of reflected on Nigeria's history since independence and came to that conclusion that in all our years, especially in the years of democratic government, we have not had one elected president who combined all of those 3 qualities and still was able to make it to the presidency.
Okay, sir. So, do you believe a wealthy and ambitious president can change or cause any or give a different approach to Nigerians' governance?
Well, we will have to wait and see, because as I said in the piece that we're looking at, Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be the first Nigerian president to have wealth, to have ambition, and also to combine the two, plus courage, to become president. So we will have to wait and see. But I do not think that wealth in and of itself, and now we're looking at material wealth, is all that is required to make a good presidency. No, I do not subscribe to that view, because if it was just material wealth that people needed to be president, then perhaps Donald Trump would have been one of America's best presidents. But of course, you and I know that he was not. But I do not know how the so-called owners of Nigeria sort of came to that conclusion that if a man was wealthy and a man was ambitious, will be a dangerous man to put forward for the presidency, because obviously they think that that combination will put such an elected president out of their reach. I think that that's a myth, but we'd like to wait and see how the Bola Tinubu years either confirm or repudiate that myth.
Okay, sir. So there's this statement by the former Kenyan Prime Minister, like nudging us not to trust technology because technology has its own pitfalls. So how do you propose that Nigerians can shift from this delicate balance between embracing technology and electoral integrity?
I suppose you're referring to Honorable Raila Odinga, the former Kenyan Prime Minister. I do not think that what he meant to say or what he said was that people should not trust technology. I believe that what he said in the context in which he said it was vigilance, the need for people to be vigilant. Okay, and we of course saw a bit of that in the last elections in Nigeria, where the mention of the use of technology, and I'm speaking specifically of the introduction of the bimodal voter verification system, sort of inspired and galvanized a significant number of young people to get involved, because not just the impression, but the promise that had been made was that that would significantly reduce the risk or exposure to tampering with the results. But we have seen, obviously, that technology in and of itself is good, and we will need to do more and more of that. It's a good thing. But we also, on top of that, we need to be vigilant. So it's not enough to say technology has been introduced and then we go to sleep, because technology does not work itself. People use technology. And so I think that what we need to do as voters and as civil society is for us to be more vigilant.
Sure. So, with wealthy and ambitious candidates, and now at the helm of, there's this belief that a wealthy person, like, they are more susceptible to corruption and all that. So, how can Nigeria combat that potential issue?
I am not so sure of if there have been studies to suggest that wealthy people, if people are wealthy, therefore they are more susceptible. But I think that I get the sense in the question that you are asking. Because, of course, obviously, you would imagine that people who are wealthier will have a much broader base, interest base, maybe in business, other vested interest, if you like, which they will tend to want to protect while they are in power. So I think that that's the sense in which the danger exists. But keep in mind also that we operate in a liberal or a multi-party democracy, if you like. So the fact that there is an executive president does not mean that there are no checks or balances. That's why you have the executive arm, you also have the legislative arm, and the judiciary, which are the three main arms of government. And of course, you have the press, which is the fourth estate of the realm. So what all these potential points of check exist for is to hold the leader who has been elected, whether he's a wealthy leader or is not a wealthy leader, is to hold such a leader to account. And I think that that's a responsibility that we all owe ourselves as citizens.
Are you optimistic about this change in our political landscape? Like, is this going to cause a divide between the rich and the poor, or is this going to make it much more better?
Well, let me say, that I'm cautiously optimistic. But again, a trend has not been established. You remember that I said in the article that this is the first time since 1960 that we would have a president who's not only wealthy, but is also ambitious, and then he's been elected as president. But I added something that very important, that is also perhaps the only president so far who has come forward prepared. And that's also important, because you may have wealth, you may have ambition, but you may not really be prepared for the job. The impression that I get, and that is the basis for my cautious optimism, is that Bola Tinubu is coming to office prepared. But what happens, we will have to wait and see when the tire hits the road, as they say. We will have to wait and see what happens. But again, another thing that gives me hope, and I hope that the vast numbers of young people and different stakeholders who took part in this election will not just take their hands off, take their feet off the pedal to say, oh, whatever the outcome of the court's decision is, well, this is their business, we are walking away. No, I think that if you love, as they say, is persistent. So if you really, truly, deeply love Nigeria, I think that this would be also a time, even after the inauguration and after all the matters have been sorted in court, for us to sit down and see how we can hold our elected leader. And by this, I do not mean only the president, but elected leaders at different levels. We have a responsibility to hold all of them to account, because no one single person can really turn around the fortunes of this country. We all have a responsibility to hold leaders at different levels of government to account. And we have also to set that example that we desire to see in our leaders.
Thank you. So, one thing to pick from this conversation is we all have a responsibility to hold our leaders accountable. So, Conversations with Azu is published on the back page of Leadership, syndicated in Vanguard and several online media platforms, further syndicated in Argentina, South Africa, Ghana, and Europe, and the United States. Check for the full content at azuishiekwene.com. Follow on Twitter at Azu Ishiekwene. Like, share, comment as we together deepen the conversations.
And we're also now on Instagram. Thank you.
Thank you. So, like we've heard from the conversation, we all have the job of holding our leaders accountable together. So, Conversations with Azu is published on the back page of Leadership newspaper, syndicated in Vanguard and several online platforms across Nigeria, further syndicated in Argentina, South Africa, Ghana, Europe, and the United States. Check for full content at azuishiekwene.com. Follow on Twitter at Azu Ishiekwene. Like, share, comment, and let us deepen these conversations together. Thank you.